Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the didactic today. We're going to be talking about streamlining ED workflows to reduce physician cognitive load. This is a joint didactic between the operations interest group and the wellness committee. And welcome. This is going to be a very interactive one, so please bring your ideas, your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. So just to introduce ourselves as presenters, my name is Monisha Dillip. I am the Assistant Director for Quality and Patient Safety at Columbia, where I also work as faculty.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy Sun, and I'm the second year administrative fellow at Yale.
And hello, I'm Amanda Deutsch. I am the Director of Wellbeing at Thomas Jefferson University, the closest hospital to you right now if you need anything. And welcome.
We have no conflicts of interest to disclose. So let's talk a little bit about cognitive load and what exactly cognitive load is. Cognitive load basically comes from a lot of different aspects in the emergency department. It can come from task switching, whether that's getting EKGs handed to you at random times, hearing codes called overhead and having to run. And then there's a lot of non-clinical challenges that we all face, whether it's the EHR, depending on which EHR you have, technical issues, communication issues. And basically the big thing about cognitive load is these are all little things that add to our mental burden and can affect the way we do our jobs. Sometimes it can be due to system design, and sometimes these are kind of inherent in our system. And so today we're going to be talking about a little bit of both and some strategies to kind of mitigate them.
So, when we're talking about this cognitive workload and the constant interruptions and the way that we've built things, I think depending on which system you have, you maybe have an epic that you can't even find your patients very easily of where yours are. You maybe are working on a note where you actually have to write a whole independent second note from the resident if you're the attending taking care of them. All these extra things, but there's also that command phone that's going off the hook while you're being handed an EKG. You are getting a presentation of a patient. So you're constantly being pulled in all these different directions. And it's really hard to do our job when we're constantly interrupted and we're thinking about one thing, but you're asked another, and now you're back to someone else while they're asking you, can they feed the patient in 13 Hall? And you're thinking, probably, but I forget what I was just thinking about. And while we're trying to think of all those things, we're wondering, what can we do to help so those burdens don't just fall to you, so that every shift feels like you're going through a slog, right? You're trying to fight to take care of your typical patients, even when it should be the easiest patients, some that I know I should be able to discharge in 20 seconds flat. I can't even get there to do that. I can't even get things done. And we've talked about that the printer is routed to the wrong area and you can't even find your discharge paperwork. So we're hoping that we can really start to think about, how do we make this frictionless? How do we make these things work for us? Which is why we always wanted to partner with operations and wellness, because we believe we should be constantly working together to simplify these things. And some of those, is, can you do a shared note? So you do a small attestation and you're no longer doing two different notes, and that burden already is starting to get lessened. Who's answering that command phone? Do you have to answer it in that exact moment? Probably that one we have to do. But then can there be other things, like in our system, that we're creating a QR code when a computer or the keyboard in the room you're in doesn't work? Just quickly scan it and it's routed already to our IS&T so that we aren't having to constantly message about those things. Other places, everyone does it differently. I know Northwestern uses the senior resident to write in a physical book, and I think their chair once a week goes through what have been the issues that are holding everyone back, so that there is an awareness of what can we be doing to make our day-to-day actually work. And I know at Yale, they actually have a nurse supervisor that's going around and checking when is the printer and the keyboard and all these things different work. 3 different ways of really doing very similar situations to make it so that we can do our job of why we love what we do, of helping take care of patients and teaching and having, hopefully, a good shift.
Great. So now we're going to incorporate an interactive scenario. So I'm going to kind of narrate probably like a very typical ED shift for all of us. And together we're going to come up with ideas on how we can make things a little bit more frictionless. Okay. So you are working in the emergency department and it is sign out time. As you and your colleagues are signing out, you find that there is not a convenient way to find all your patients in the zone that you're working with in the EHR. As you're signing out as well, nurses and techs are asking you questions and handing you EKGs, and you're even kind of directed to a EMS direction call. So, what would you do in this situation to decrease your cognitive load? Like, what can we do as a system together? I'll come around with the mic. Or you can shout it out. It's gonna, yes.
We have stack times when people are signing out so that one team is responsible for those things so that it is a secure time for check.
Fantastic. That's a great clinical operational thing you can implement. Anything else?
Clinician and triage or first look to with an EKG so that it can go over the assignment routine.
Great. How about for the EHR? Yeah, exactly. So oftentimes, you're collaborating with your colleagues, and the EHR fixes, while sometimes they may seem daunting, could actually be fixed pretty quickly. So, for example, at our institution, when we changed to a new zone, one of our colleagues mentioned, hey, the patient list doesn't split into the two new zones, so we were able to get that up and running within 24 hours. And I wasn't part of that particular informatics team, but all you had to do was ask a couple questions and you got there. Anything else that we could do during the sign up time?
Private space.
Yeah, so kind of like creating that protected space. Well, thank you for all your great ideas. So you touched on a lot of them already. So, we talked about technologies and kind of minimizing the interruptions as well as staffing. So staggering our shift times. I think something that's really interesting, which we also implemented recently at our institution, is kind of having an overhead signal saying it's safe patient sign out time to kind of signal one of our teams is signing out to kind of minimize the interruptions. And Ryan Thompson in Wisconsin actually did research on this. And what they found was really compelling. By having an alert like this, they were able to decrease interruptions from 6 during sign out to 1 interruption. And the total time during sign out also decreased from 14 minutes and to 11 minutes, which was statistically significant. And as well, from the physician well-being perspective, they also felt that sign out went more smoothly from a scale of 0 to 5. So they the physician input said that they felt sign out was initially 4 and then it improved to 5. So there's definitely multiple ways to make the ED more frictionless. I think, as Amanda touched on previously, at every institution there's a different way to do that. And I think a lot of times it's the small things to address that are really important. So these quick fixes that we're able to make the ED more frictionless.
So the next thing we wanted to do was kind of bring it up to you guys. So what are some things that are causes of friction in your department? And then we can kind of group think to see how we can solve them. Because the big thing is kind of identifying these areas that are stuttering in your department. And then once we kind of come up with ideas, these are things that you can possibly bring back to your team as potential fixes. Does anybody have anything first that they want to? Yes, go ahead.
So I'm from Indiana University. For one of our sites, we have Cerner, and specifically, there's so many clicks to discharge a patient, and then on top of that, we have to print the paper as a resident and then bring it to the patient physically. When at our other site, we have Epic, and it's just a simple dispo tab, and then I don't have to print anything. Nursing takes care of that. And so it seems like a little task, but I'm when I'm in the high acuity section and things are burning down, and then people are like, papers, question mark? And I'm I'm trying.
So we have Cerner, which are optimal, but once we put our discharge paperwork in, we just hit discharge, and assuming they've already talked to the patient, the nurses actually put all the paperwork into the rest of that. So that saves.
Does anybody have any other suggestions to kind of help expedite that workflow? Another thing you could theoretically consider is kind of like smaller things. Even if you print the papers, maybe, putting them in a designated folder nearby, and then, coordinate with your nursing team to like pick up those papers to be able to take them, to the patients. And it's part of kind of that whole team-based approach to the department, right? Having nursing own their part of what they do as part of the care.
And I think as we're asking for you to share what's not going well, right? You don't have to come up with all these ideas on your own or solve all of them on your own. We do listening sessions at Thomas Jefferson, and the ideas are amazing that people are coming up with. And then I see all my ops team here. I send it to them of, can we make this happen? And we're working on it. Some of it is not as quick, right? If you don't have your own Epic person or you don't have Epic, it takes time. But how many of you have to go Google the first time seizure form every time you have a new patient? And it's like, if we're always doing this, why can't it be in the dispo part of Epic? So we have that quick link. Again, you're saving typing in into Google every time, first time seizure, DMV, Pennsylvania. But like every little second that we can give back to all of us, right, does help, and probably gives you a moment where you can educate or do something. You actually went into emergency medicine and went to go do this and stay at an academic institution.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm gonna more go with where she is, because the negotiation is how is nursing, who doesn't own that process right now and doesn't necessarily want to own that process. How is it that they are now going to be motivated to own this process, which is a whole other level for them? Sure, take something off our plate, but what's their motivation?
I think that brings up a great point, and something that actually, when I was in residency, this was a change that occurred while I was in residency to kind of motivate the nurses to try and discharge the papers, take the discharge papers to the patients. I will say it's going to be an issue, and it depends on the kind of culture at your institution. Some have different, I guess, types of nursing leadership is how I'll put that,
Unions.
and unions
It's
and
not
things
the
like.
job description, it's not the job description.
Right. I think part of it might be leveraging kind of almost an emotional appeal, for lack of anything else. Part of nursing is kind of explaining to the patient and, like, asking if they have any questions, and kind of like the care plan that they create. And I think that these discharge papers do fall within that. I will say it does have to come top down more likely than not. I think it's hard to get adoption otherwise, unless you have your nursing leadership on board with that. And theoretically, it could help with turnover. It could help, make your physicians more open to other questions. Maybe that means that they're more likely to respond to, can this patient eat? Or, things like that. And kind of opening up one thing makes them more free for other things. And it's kind of a give and take at that point.
We also had gone through something similar, and kind of like one framework that the nurses kind of really liked from their perspective was like, when patients are waiting around to get discharged, are not as happy. And so the nurses would actually get called over and like, where are my discharge papers, and got pulled into, conversations like that. And so by the nurses having autonomy to also print out the discharge paperwork to allow the patient to be discharged, there was actually greater satisfaction from their perspective, because they, had the autonomy to do that, and it led to happier patients who were able to, go home, go get food and get dinner.
I won't fault you for not having been at our most recent well-being talk, but the autonomy part, truly, when you give that back and that choice, that if they want to print it out, because we have the same, one of our hospitals, we have to print it, right? But I think as you give that back, they might, or if you have a conversation, do you want this to be within your power? I'm not going to guarantee we can solve every issue, but I think there are ways we can go about it and really give people back that they might have the motivation once we give them, you do have this power, once we've definitely discharged them. And I think people at times really will feel that engagement to go do that.
That's feeling like a great study up in the field of nursing supervision.
That's a great point. Yeah.
You're going to increase the nurse's actual happiness, then of course it's in your interest.
Right. And I think the other kind of less loved part of this is that, dispo to departure is also a metric that is tracked. And this is a clear intervention that can, shorten that. And that also can kind of help you get your team's buy-in to be able to reach out to nursing's team to kind of like push that a little bit harder, reducing that dispo to departure time. And I also wanted to piggyback off of what Amanda said in terms of little fixes to EMRs to make them more easy and make things easier for your clinicians. One of the things that was recently done at Columbia was adding things to, there's like a bar at the top of Epic with just like easy to click links. One of our the place where you can find a lot of the clinical guidelines called CGAP that's listed at the top now, and it makes things a lot easier for people to find. So little fixes like that are things that you can suggest to your team just to make things more streamlined for everybody. Things that you think might be useful or things that you reach for on a day-to-day basis, just bring that back because there's easy places on Epic or other EMRs to be able to kind of highlight those things.
And I think, the great thing about SAEM is we're all kind of working on similar problems together. So in the last couple minutes, I was curious, like, has anyone implemented, similar frameworks in their emergency department to kind of help solve these quick fixes to make their ED more frictionless? Do you want to
Okay, hi, I'm Diana. I work in a PZD at NYU in Long Island. So we developed we call it the Pebbles in the Shoe project. The concept of a pebble in the shoe bothering you or fixing them isn't necessarily unique or something that we created, but we operationalize, say, a way to take from all the clinicians' perspective, what are your pebbles in the shoe? What are these inefficiencies, these frustrations? Like they're coming from the place of what is frustrating, what is small but frustrating and kind of leading you to have a bad work day. And you'd be surprised, like the small things that could really tip you over the edge, like the printer keeps jamming. You'd love to discharge that patient, but you don't have a physical paper to give them. I mean, things like that. And so we created a process to submit the problem in kind of a real time. And we have a task force. We have a group of clinicians. We have the buy-in from the leadership, the admin, nursing even, and supply to work on it. And I think it's working because we keep getting pebbles. So the clinicians are buying in and submitting their, the issues. And we close the loop by showing a printout, like a report about quarterly, like what has been done. Because someone might say, oh, that one time I sent a pebble, like what came of it? Did anyone listen? Did anything come of it? It's like kind of small. So it's like not necessarily something we talk about in every monthly staff meeting, but you can see it. And then the most important part is that the ability to submit a pebble electronically with a QR code, it's really easy. We make it so easy. It's at your workstation fingertips. It's on every single computer, more or less. And what we don't want is people to forget about it or like wait to the end of their shift, forget about it, or change their mind.
Thanks, Diana. Anybody else want to share?
I'm for didactic.
Shameless plug. We're talking about it at 5.
Great. I love it. Anybody else wanted to share anything before we wrap up today? All right. Pass it back to Monisha.
Sweet. And thank you guys all for participating and for all of the great conversation. Big things that we wanted you to take away. The smallest changes can make large impacts for people, especially on our day-to-day lives. Pebble in the shoe is such a great phrase for cognitive load, I think. And so just kind of thinking up a couple of practical solutions can reduce that cognitive load little by little, because remember, ultimately, all of this leads to better physicians and better patient safety. And so it's easy to have admin buy-in with that. So we kind of urge you now, next steps, to implement one change in your emergency department. And if you'd like to tell us how it goes, we'd love that too. And also, shameless plug, if you guys are interested in doing anything with the operations interest group or the wellness committee going forward, you have your chairs right here. So let us know. We'd love to have you. Thank you so much. Bye.